couple of kids that got taken out for like language stuff. Not exactly. Okay, so does anybody know the auditory? Not exactly speech disabilities, but does anybody know the difference between, or the auditory difference between the word tooth and the word tongue?
You use your tongue. Oh, actually, I have no idea.
Okay, so there's two types of words. There's tip of your mouth word, and then there's a back of your throat word. So can you tell me which one is which? Because the sound is coming from the back of your throat. Tongue. And it's coming from the front of your mouth when you say tooth. You're using the front of your mouth. Okay, so anyway, I interviewed a speech pathologist. I interviewed my aunt. She went here like back in like the 70s, and she graduated from here. She graduated valedictorian of her class. A speech pathologist is a person who specializes in communication disorders and communication delays within the language. So it's not exactly ESOL, because those are kids who are trying to, well, kids or people who are trying to understand the language. Like, let's say a person from Korea might come over and they're still trying to learn how to speak English. That's something totally different. And for example, a child who has a hard time pronouncing a word with the letter R. In this field, the communication is very face-to-face. It's very informal and, I guess, personal. Speech pathologists use questions often, like, can you pronounce spatula? And they'll say it over and over again, so their students can catch on, and it's at a very slow pace, so they don't feel like they're not going to get it. It's also a social issue in a way, because when kids and adults too, when they have a speech impediment, it kind of hinders their social capabilities, because I feel like people won't understand what they're talking about. So speech pathologists help them in that sense too, to use techniques to help their fluency. Their working environment can vary from secondary education, a hospital, a clinic, to even the patient's home. My aunt works with children. She originally wanted to work with adults, but a lot of the jobs at the time were geared towards children in schools. So she would go to either their home or their schools and take a couple kids at a time that the teachers felt needed assistance in speaking, and from there she would assess their speech and language disorder and how not bad it was, but what they need to work on. While one child might have a problem with stuttering, another child might have a problem using a letter K. And this is with children and adults. With adults, it's more of a medical issue. Sometimes it happens after maybe a stroke or a heart attack that they have speech communication problems. A typical day depends on the workload or the case. If she has a lot of kids in one area, then she'll stay in one school. Or if she only has a couple of students, she'll just go to their homes rather than their school. In order to get far in this career, it's definitely something you have to be diligent with. My aunt got her master's in speech language pathology. She got her master's in speech language communications and disorders and a certificate of clinical competence. And she probably wouldn't be where she is today if she didn't have all three, and it definitely took her a really long time to get all of them. She also took a lot of courses that were essential to getting the degree. She took a class called Anatomy and Physiology of the Vocal Mechanisms. That kind of blew my mind because I didn't know you could take a class like that, but it was kind of like listening to people talk over and over and over again and analyzing different fluency patterns in people's voices and where there were errors, and it was pretty interesting. Also with speech language pathologists, they also have to focus a little bit on auditory issues because some children or adults may have a speech impediment because of their hearing. They might have damaged hearing, so it affects the way they speak. And also, sometimes, not often though, because that's a whole different field, but sometimes they may work with children with cleft palate, and after they've had surgeries to fix their facial features. I don't really know that much about cleft palate, but they also help them too. Internships are usually working under another speech pathologist, so they'll work under them for a couple of years, and then once they become speech pathologists themselves, they have to do the same thing. Last year was her final year with her intern, and she said it went pretty well, and it was interesting to see on the other side of somebody learning in newer education systems. I don't think I would necessarily have this as my career because it was so, like, researching and listening to her speak, a lot of it was very intricate and really complicated and precise, and I'm not the precisest person, so it's definitely a commendable occupation, but I can't